If you don't come out of your religious pride, God is not going to be able to use you to the capacity and degree that he wants to use you, okay? And so this is just a loving rebuke, okay? That you have to come out of your religious pride. And I know it sounds really cute for the church to be like, oh, I'm an Esther, oh, I'm a Daniel, like, that sounds all cute and whatnot, but like the reality is most believers do not have what it takes to fulfill the mantle of Esther or Daniel in these modern times, okay? Because let's take a look, and as someone who's been called to the mantle of Esther and Daniel in these modern times, let's really look at it. Let's really look at what it involves, okay? If you look at Daniel's mantle, his calling, he was called to serve Nebuchadnezzar, a pagan king in a pagan land, and to become head over all the magicians in Babylon, okay? And God is raising up those with similar mantles at this time. How do I know? Because I'm one of them. And I understand that many religious people are not going to be able to understand it, and that's okay. But it is what it is. So Daniel could have easily been like, absolutely not. I will not serve a pagan king. I will not teach and train and be head over all these pagan magicians, sorcerers, right? If he went off of his own mind and his own religious pride and zeal. But Daniel had an intimate relationship with the heart of God. And Daniel understood and could discern his assignment and the purpose for his assignment. So Daniel put his pride aside. Now, he still went in there and served with integrity before the Lord. He still went in there and refused to bow or worship to any other God than the Most High, right? So he remained loyal, faithful, despite being thrust into and called to a place full of paganism, right? And God had a higher purpose for this, and he had a higher purpose in mind for the calling of Daniel. It's because of Daniel's obedience that Nebuchadnezzar would go on to acknowledge God as the Most High. And it is because of Daniel's obedience that the Magi would later go on to use astrology taught to them by Daniel. So astrology that from a biblical perspective revealed the star of the Messiah in order for them to trace it at the time of his coming and to bless him and gift him with incense and myrrh. And Daniel also had to submit to the call and the order of Nebuchadnezzar that he would undergo 4 years of training in the wisdom of the Chaldeans, which is divination in its many various forms. One of those being astrology. Now, God had a purpose for all of this. But if God were to call most of you to this kind of mantle, if God were to call you to go and to serve the leader of a nation and serve this leader's sorcerers and be head over all of them, a lot of you would think that the devil was talking to you, that you are not hearing from God correctly, that was not of God. This is why be careful how you judge others. Be careful, because you could be speaking against a prophet of God, against a move of God. It's interesting because a few days ago, God led me to Baruch chapter 2. And in this chapter, God is rebuking them, Israel, and reminding them that he was the one who brought them out of Egypt, but he's rebuking them for not serving Babylon. And we're at this time where, prophetically speaking, on the timetable of God, God is using Babylon to subdue his enemies. There will come a time when Babylon will fall, and we're moving towards that. But there is time, if you are prophetically and scripturally sound and knowledgeable, there is a time where, and I've released those prophecies, where God is using the king of Babylon to subdue his enemies. And so in Baruch chapter 2, he's rebuking them for not serving Babylon. Imagine if Daniel had refused to serve Babylon. And you see, God has a bigger picture in mind. He has souls in mind for this. You may ask, why would he do that? Well, we talked about it. We talked about how that was vital for Nebuchadnezzar to acknowledge the Most High. It was vital for the Magi to later on go on and gift the Messiah and be a witness to the Messiah in our scriptures for all to read about. But God is also building bridges where he is getting rid of this religious pride, and he's also calling forth a people who have been rejected because of religious pride and turned off from God, and he's calling them into relationship with him. These outcasts, these misfits. You know, I love the astrology community. I think they're some of the most like really smart, spiritual people, and they are oftentimes people who have gone through a lot and have overcome a lot. And it's just, it irritates me that there is so many bullies in the church that don't have as much knowledge of the things of God and the Spirit of God as they think they do. And they shut the kingdom of heaven off to other people. Now let's look at Esther. Esther was called to marry a pagan king in a pagan nation. And I love the movie of Esther because it really depicts how the prophet Ezra was there at this time, and he was basically making commentary remarks of his distaste at the thought that Esther would even consider marrying the pagan king, right? So I'm sure there were many in Israel who turned their nose up at the thought of Esther disgracing their God by offering herself to this pagan king who had pagan beliefs and who had a whole harem of virgins that he was going to be sleeping with. I'm sure they clutched their pearls at the thought. But Esther understood her assignment. Esther had an intimate relationship with God, the Most High, and was humble in character enough to know that she was going to follow the call of God for her life, regardless of what she felt about it or anyone else felt about it. So the same Israel that I'm sure many of them turned their nose up as they watched Esther walk in her purpose and calling were the same ones who would later go on, I'm sure, to thank the Most High that he positioned Esther in that position because she was able to save the nation of Israel. So before you judge, understand that you only see a small fraction of the picture. God sees the big picture, okay? And God raises up certain people to do things that the majority would never be able to do because they don't have the discernment, they don't have the wisdom, they don't have the intimate knowledge, understanding, and humility of God to carry those mantles. So it sounds like a cute little cliche thing for people to say in church, but when it comes down to it, a lot of people don't understand those mantles in a practical, realistic, real life measure. And that's okay. We don't always have to understand what God is doing. But it's wise to be slow to speak and not be quick to judge. It is wise to remain silent sometimes because you just might be speaking against the vessel of God and the move of God and the very one who God is using to position for your good, for your liberation, for your advancement. So God is going to use people that you may not expect, okay? And Israel, they because of their religious pride, because of their pride and their long prayers and their robes and their adherence to the law, they look down on others. They fail to see their own pride in their hearts. And because of this, God chose to go reveal himself and to use the Gentiles. So if you see God using those who may not even know him as well as you do, don't be surprised, because your pride is disqualifying you for greater things.